The British Empire, a vast network of territories, relied heavily on its crown colonies. These colonies, directly controlled by the British Crown, were integral to the empire's expansion and power. Unlike chartered colonies or protectorates, crown colonies lacked significant autonomy. They were governed directly from London, with the crown holding ultimate authority over their affairs. This direct control distinguished crown colonies and shaped their unique political and social landscapes. The establishment of crown colonies stemmed from various factors. Some, like Bermuda and Newfoundland, emerged from settlements. Others, like Trinidad and British Guiana, were acquired through treaties or conquests. Regardless of their origin, these colonies shared a common thread. They were subject to the direct rule of the British monarch. This direct rule had a profound impact on the lives of colonists, influencing their political rights, economic activities, and social structures. The system of governance in crown colonies evolved over time. It reflected the changing dynamics of the empire and the growing demands for self-governance. However, the underlying principle of direct crown control remained a constant, shaping the relationship between Britain and its colonies for centuries. At the heart of the crown colony system stood the governor, a figure of immense authority and responsibility. Appointed by the British monarch, the governor served as the crown's direct representative, a role that came with both prestige and pressure. He held considerable power, acting as the head of the colony's administration, military, and judiciary. This meant he was not only a political leader but also a military commander and chief justice. He embodied the authority of the crown, making him the most powerful figure in the colony. His word was often law, and his decisions could shape the future of the colony. The governor's responsibilities were vast and varied, encompassing every aspect of colonial life. He oversaw the implementation of British laws, appointed officials to key positions, and managed the colony's finances. This included everything from tax collection to budget allocation. He also held the power to grant land, issue pardons, and even declare war on behalf of the colony. These powers made him a pivotal figure in both peace and conflict. This concentration of power in the hands of a single individual underscored the direct nature of crown control. It was a system designed to ensure that the colony remained firmly under British influence. The governor's role, however, extended beyond mere administration. He was a diplomat, a negotiator, and a promoter of British culture and interests. He was also tasked with promoting British interests in the colony. This included fostering trade relationships and ensuring the economic prosperity of the colony. This often involved encouraging trade, developing resources, and ensuring the colony's loyalty to the crown. The governor had to balance economic growth with political stability. His success in fulfilling these duties was crucial to maintaining the colony's stability and profitability. A well-managed colony was a valuable asset to the British Empire. The governor's power, though significant, was not absolute. He operated within a framework of oversight and accountability. He was answerable to the British government in London and subject to their instructions. This ensured that the governor's actions aligned with the broader goals of the empire. Moreover, he often faced resistance from local elites who sought to protect their own interests. Navigating these local dynamics required political acumen and diplomacy. The governor's role was thus a complex one, requiring a delicate balance of authority, diplomacy, and strategic vision. His leadership was pivotal in shaping the colony's future and ensuring its place within the British Empire. To assist the governor in his duties, crown colonies employed a system of councils. These councils, composed of appointed officials and sometimes a select few local elites, provided advice and assistance in governing the colony. While their input was valued, the final decision-making power rested solely with the governor. The most prominent of these councils was the Executive Council. This body, typically consisting of high-ranking officials and influential colonists, served as the governor's closest advisors. They met regularly to discuss matters of policy, legislation, and administration, offering their perspectives and recommendations to the governor. In addition to the Executive Council, some crown colonies also had legislative councils. These bodies, larger and more diverse in their composition, were tasked with debating and passing laws for the colony. However, the governor retained the power to veto any legislation passed by the Legislative Council, limiting their autonomy. The presence of councils, despite their limited power, provided a semblance of local participation in governance. They allowed for some degree of consultation and input from colonists, albeit within the confines of the Crown's overarching control. Section 4. Taxation without representation, the seeds of dissent. A defining characteristic of the Crown colony governance was the absence of direct representation in the British Parliament. This meant that the colonists, who were British subjects, had no elected officials to advocate for their interests or to influence the laws and policies that were being imposed upon them from across the Atlantic. Colonists, despite being British subjects, had no elected representatives to voice their concerns or influence legislation that directly affected them. This lack of representation was not just a minor oversight, it was a fundamental flaw in the governance of the colonies, leading to widespread dissatisfaction and unrest. This lack of representation, coupled with the imposition of taxes by the British Parliament, fueled resentment and contributed to growing calls for greater autonomy. The taxes were seen as an overreach of power, a way for the British government to extract resources from the colonies without giving anything in return. Colonists argued that their lack of representation rendered them subject to taxation without consent. They believed that it was fundamentally unfair to be taxed by a government in which they had no voice. And this belief became a rallying cry for those seeking change. They pointed to the principle of no taxation without representation, a cornerstone of British political thought, as justification for their grievances. This principle was deeply embedded in the British political tradition and was seen as a basic right of all British subjects. This principle asserted that the government had no right to levy taxes on individuals without their consent, either directly or through elected representatives. It was a principle that had been fought for and won in Britain, and the colonists saw no reason why it should not apply to them as well. The issue of taxation without representation became a major point of contention between Britain and its American colonies in the 18th century. It was not just about the money. It was about the right to self-governance and the ability to have a say in the decisions that affected their lives. It was a key factor leading to the American Revolution, demonstrating the potential consequences of denying colonists a voice in their own governance. The seeds of dissent that were planted by these policies grew into a full-blown revolution, changing the course of history. The struggle against taxation without representation highlighted a fundamental tension within the Crown colony system. It exposed the inherent contradictions in a system that demanded loyalty and financial support from the colonies while denying them a voice in their own affairs. While colonists were expected to contribute to the empire's coffers, they were denied a say in how those funds were raised or spent. This created a sense of injustice and exploitation, further fueling the desire for independence. This perceived injustice fueled a sense of grievance and contributed to the growth of anti-colonial sentiment. The colonists' fight for representation and fair treatment laid the groundwork for the revolutionary movement that would eventually lead to the birth of a new nation. Section 5. The Long Road to Self-Governance, a Gradual Evolution. The path from direct Crown control to self-governance was a gradual and often tumultuous one, spanning several decades and involving numerous political, social and economic changes. It was marked by periods of reform, resistance and compromise as colonies gradually gained greater control over their own affairs. These periods were often characterized by intense negotiations and sometimes even violent confrontations. The evolution towards self-governance was driven by a confluence of factors, including the changing political landscape in Britain and the colony's own growing sense of identity and purpose. The rise of Enlightenment ideals, emphasizing individual liberty and self-determination, played a significant role. Thinkers like John Locke and Jean-Jacques Rousseau inspired many colonial leaders to envision a future where they could govern themselves. These ideals, coupled with the growing economic and social maturity of some colonies, fueled demands for greater autonomy. The flourishing trade and the establishment of local institutions made the colonies more self-sufficient and confident in their ability to manage their own affairs. The British government, facing pressure from both within the colonies and at home, responded with a series of reforms. These reforms were often a balancing act. aiming to placate the colonists while ensuring that the empire remained intact and functional. These reforms aimed to address some of the colonists' grievances while maintaining the empire's integrity. Measures such as granting limited self-governance and establishing local councils were introduced to give colonies a semblance of control. The pace and extent of these reforms varied significantly from colony to colony, reflecting the specific circumstances and the level of agitation for change. Some colonies moved swiftly towards self-governance while others lagged behind, mired in internal conflicts and resistance. The transition to self-governance was not without its challenges. The process was often fraught with difficulties, including economic instability, social unrest, and political infighting. Conservative elements within British society and within the colonies themselves resisted change, fearing the potential loss of control and the fragmentation of the empire. These groups often lobbied against reforms and sought to maintain the status quo. This resistance often led to delays and setbacks in the process of reform. Despite these obstacles, the drive towards self-governance continued, propelled by the unwavering determination of those who believed in the ideals of freedom and self-determination.